I don't think the clown world is over by any means. I think they're going to try everything in their power to get their way. I mean, I'm optimistic. I don't think that the globalists will win. I just think that we all need to stop it from happening. I mean, basically you just need to say, no, I'm not going to adhere to your policies.
So welcome back to the Money Matters podcast that is powered to you by Coinbase. Today I'm thrilled because I'm sitting down with Jess from Plan B Passport, and we're going to be talking about all things digital nomadism, Bitcoin, and how we can defeat the globalists and the tyrants over at the World Economic Forum. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So today, the first kind of thing I'm going to touch on today is the sovereign individual. So you and Katie always refer to that book as the Bible of Plan B Passport. So what does that book mean to you guys over at Plan B Passports?
So yes, it is the second Bible for us at Plan B. Basically, we just embrace the sovereign individual thesis. We help individuals to obtain a second citizenship where we believe that it's best beneficial to them in various ways. So whether they're looking for a regulatory environment for their business, whether they're looking for more freedoms in general, better tax regime, more options for traveling, people need to have a plan B and a second option, basically an exit plan, to make these governments finally compete for them. We want to diversify our risks so that if, say, my government decides to go full authoritarian, I can just pack up and leave. I can just say, this is not for me. I'm out of here. So basically at Plan B, we try to help people become more sovereign and to limit their dependency on any one particular state, and to basically take advantage of the competition between governments, where basically it's pure capitalism applied to a government service. You donate your money to a government fund and they give you a passport. And basically it's an insurance policy that allows you to sleep better at night.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. A new passport is an insurance policy. When I was getting to know you guys in your podcast and I come across that episode when you guys were talking about the Sovereign Individual book, it was I had a little bit of a fist pump moment because that is my favorite book. And if only I had read it a little bit earlier, I might have had myself a second passport, because I was personally trapped in Australia for around 2 years when they had the international borders closed. Yeah, it wasn't fun.
It was insane. No, we had a bunch of Australians reach out to us where they're just like, I need a way out now.
Yeah, that's how it felt. It was very scary. It was like living through 1984 in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was kind of going to be my next question. In a recent podcast that you and Katie were recording, you were kind of mentioning the fact that you were seeing a lot of people from these Western so-called democratic countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand to inquire about your services and wanting to move to countries that have traditionally been thought of as not very nice countries like Latin America or Russia, or even countries scattered all around the world. So how do you see that evolving between, people leaving these so-called Western democratic countries and where they're going to be moving to in the future?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's pretty interesting because flag theory has a lot in common with game theory, where basically countries who were authoritarian 30, 40 years ago are pretty free now because people aren't ready to give up their freedoms. They have a whole lot of our fuck you mentality to the government. Russia, they'll probably be thriving in like 10 years, whereas a lot of Western countries will probably fall into hard times. Weak men create hard times. Venezuela will probably be thriving 30 years from now. And it's not necessarily about governments being good or bad. It's basically just about people who allow them to be good or bad. And the countries where people aren't pushing back, they'll just take advantage of it and just grab as much power as people will let them.
That's a really interesting point, especially about Russia and Venezuela. I was actually talking to a digital nomad yesterday who was shilling Venezuela very hard. He was there recently, and He's very happy with how things are evolving, and he thinks there's even capital flowing in there for investment. So that's a very interesting one I want to keep my eye on. The next thing I kind of wanted to talk about was which countries do you guys support over there at Plan B Passport? I know the last time I checked, you guys had, I think, 6 or 7 countries in the Caribbean. Is that still the case, or are there any other countries you guys are supporting at the moment?
Yeah, so basically when Plan B first started, we worked with 30 jurisdictions, and because of our audience and our philosophical alignments, basically we nailed it down to now we're at 7 countries. We work with 5 Caribbean islands, and we work with these jurisdictions because there's full confidentiality of the process. It's a citizenship by investment program, which is our focus. It's pure capitalism applied to a government service where, like I said before, you basically donate like 100, 150 grand into a government fund and they give you a passport. It's totally done remotely. You never have to visit the island. You don't have to live there. You just get a Plan B by basically just giving up some money to the government. And we recently started working with Turkey because we consider it a very geopolitically and geographically detached passport, especially for people who have, say, US, Canada, UK, Australia, or New Zealand passports. Just because Turkey isn't necessarily hated by these countries, but not in bed with them either. So, and we also started working with Mexico's residency program. We had a lot of interest in that as well, but that's not a passport program, so it's different.
Yeah, residency is a very interesting option for someone like myself who's a little bit of a cheapskate and looking to stack as many sats as possible, but also not return to a tyrannical Australia. What do you think is the easiest option you guys have there in terms of the full-blown passports? So which passport do you think is the easiest and probably the cheapest passport? And then how does that compare to like a residency program in Mexico? That's obviously a lot easier, but you don't get the full freedom that a passport gives you.
Yeah, for sure. So our most popular passport, especially for single applicants, which is mainly Bitcoiners, single males, but they mainly go for St. Lucia because it's the quickest process. They require the least amount of documents, and it's the cheapest. It's basically 130 grand total. And that's our most popular passport program. Mexico is a really popular residency program just because it's you basically show financial solvency. You show that you're not going to become a burden on the government, and then they'll grant you residency. And Mexico, you can actually get a passport eventually. It just takes a lot longer. You have to hold residency for 5 years, and then you can apply for a passport.
Yeah, I think Mexico is a very interesting option because it's just so cheap there. I was there last week. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting because Mexico was one of the freest countries during COVID. Because Katie actually lived there for about 2 years, and they didn't shut down anything. People were living life like normal. So it was actually pretty interesting to see that it was one of the freest countries in the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. When I escaped Australia in early 2022, Mexico was just about the only country that would take me. No other country would let me in. Yeah, it was really scary. That's wild. And like the difficulties I had to go through to try to get a flight that took me directly to Mexico, that was nearly impossible because there's no direct flights from Australia to Mexico. You have to transit through other countries. And believe it or not, Canada was actually one of the few countries that would let a person of my medical status transit through to get to Mexico. So yeah, that's a great point about Mexico.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and people don't realize the gravity of your passport not being usable. And COVID was a huge eye-opener, I think, because we were just flooded with people like, oh my gosh, my passport now does not work. I can't travel. I can't do anything.
Yeah, I wish I had have like I read The Sovereign Individual in 2019, but I wasn't quite fully orange pilled then, so I wish I had understood it. I understood it enough to know as soon as the early 2020, we'll call them events, transpired from our governments, that was when I went and got my passport. But it takes a little while to actually, before you can get your passport, and by the time I had it, the international borders were closed to people like myself. So it can certainly be a very scary situation and something you probably should prepare for well in advance. I personally think the whole 2020, we'll call it event, is only the first of many dominoes that's going to fall this decade.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that if you don't have it and you need it, you're sparked.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to these Caribbean islands, I haven't quite been paying enough attention as I probably should to those recently, just because I've been pretty happy in El Salvador and Mexico. But do you know, off the top of your head, what the restrictions were like in the Caribbean islands during 2020 and 2021?
Yeah, so that's another reason why St. Lucia is so popular, is because they were the most freedom-oriented island throughout COVID. No restrictions, no vaccine requirements. They required a PCR test, but that's it. And then with Antigua, they went full authoritarian. They required vaccines. Even for citizens, if you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't get in the island. So, yeah, St. Lucia was definitely the most freedom-oriented out of the 5.
And that's what people are looking for, freedom-oriented nation states. That's why I suppose El Salvador's become so popular when Bukele kind of reversed his decision on the whole health situation in 2021. Bitcoins from all around the world are flooding to El Salvador. I bump into them nearly every day down here in El Salvador. It's amazing.
We put out actually basically an email campaign saying for anybody who is interested in El Salvador's residency citizenship program to just let us know. And we have a list of like 700-800 people that want to get El Salvador citizenship.
That's wild. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's this is the sovereign individual thesis unfolding right now. Most people inquiring to move to a different nation state, typically they've got a little bit of capital behind them. They've got not only economic capital, but they've probably got intellectual capital. So if you have 700, 800 people wanting to move to El Salvador, how many zeros is that in terms of net worth? And it just kind of shows why a lot of these other countries are trying to copy what El Salvador and Mexico is doing. Jess, what do you think, like over the next 5 to 10 years or so, do you see other countries trying to copy what, say, El Salvador is doing in terms of Bitcoin adoption and more, bodily autonomy, medical, autonomy as well to attract those digital nomads?
If they're smart, and governments that tend to be very smart.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not at all. And if they're sticking with their greedy, power hungry mindset, I feel like a lot of them won't. But I feel like if enough people force their hand, they're going to be forced to either adopt this mindset and adopt these basically acceptances, or be left in the dust and everyone's going to leave.
Yeah, it's like there's so many things that's just pointing to people leaving these countries like Canada and Australia. Like another one that's not really often talked about is the weather. So I was living in Tasmania there for 19 years, and for 9 months of the year in Tasmania, it's absolutely unbearable. You can't go outside because it doesn't get any warmer than 15 degrees Celsius during the day. I know that's probably going to be a little bit of a hard to convert for the Americans listening to this one, but it's just too cold. Like here in El Salvador right now, it's the middle of winter, and I'm here sweating bullets as the sun's coming in, smashing me through the window. And it's like, I love it. I certainly much prefer the weather as well. So you have the climate reason, you have the economic reason, you have the medical or autonomy reason. I don't see why more people are beginning to, leave these Western countries that are just not providing people any incentive to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, if people don't force their hand and they don't actually start to make the demands of what they want, either by showing that they are going to leave or showing that they're just not going to put up with basically the bullshit that the government wants to put them through, they're not going to change anything, because why would they? The people are just rolling over and accepting everything. So at the end of the day, it's up to basically all of us to force their hand.
Yeah, it's definitely happening, but it's happening a little bit slower than I would have liked. Switching gears a little bit, I saw that you and Katie headed on over to speak at Bitcoin. Was it Bitcoin Amsterdam? What did they? What was the name of that event, and how was it go over there speaking at Bitcoin Amsterdam?
Yeah, so it was an amazing experience. It was Bitcoin Amsterdam. It was the biggest European Bitcoin conference. Basically, it was like, I think around 3,000 people went, and it was Katie and I and her 9-month-old baby traveling Europe. Basically, we're in Europe for 2.5 weeks because we spoke at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and then we also spoke at the Lifetime Liberty Conference in Prague. And it was incredible. I really liked the ambiance, and it was a bunch of Europeans, so it was just different types of people that you met, and it was incredible. It was an amazing time.
The Lifetime Liberty event, I've actually never heard about that. What was it like, and was there many Bitcoiners there?
There actually were. So, and there were a bunch of Bitcoiner speakers too. Like Svetsky was there, Stefan Lovera was there, um, a bunch of Bitcoiners. But it was just, I mean, it's just, there's something about being surrounded by freedom-minded and freedom-oriented people that it's just such like a breath of fresh air. And it's like, I can be, not that I wouldn't be my normal self around normies, but it's just nice to not have to like explain yourself and explain your mindset. And it was just such a, it was a bullish moment for me because I was like, okay, there's actually like a lot of people that want to see a better future.
I couldn't agree more. Conferences are exceptionally bullish. I think that's probably like, if I have to sit down and think about, how much of, why am I being a digital nomad? I would have to say conferences, meeting other Bitcoiners and like-minded people would probably be like 20 to 30% of the decision why I'm staying on like the American continent, just because there are so many freedom-minded Bitcoiners here, and you're always like a short plane trip away from the next conference. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to double click on that point about conferences. They're absolutely amazing.
I love them so much. They just fill my heart. Like, I can't wait for Miami.
Yeah, they're brilliant. I was actually, I was traveling with one of my Australian buddies just last week, and it was the first conference he went to. It wasn't even a conference. It was Acapulco in Mexico, Acapulco. Yeah, see, he was a speaker down at that event, and he'd never been to like any sort of a conference before then. And before the conference, he's like, yeah, I'm probably going to head back to Australia in 3 or 4 months with the missus. But after that conference, I noticed a little bit of a shift in tone because there's just no conferences in Australia. So they really are great.
It's a game changer. It really is.
It's amazing. So shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to know a little bit about your background. Obviously, working at Plan B Passports, I think you might have done a little bit of traveling in your time. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you were doing before you found Bitcoin, and then maybe we can start talking about more recent history with Plan B.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I was homeschooled for the majority of my education life. So with that, we were able to travel a lot. I've been to Canada multiple times, Italy, Paris, London, been to Colombia, and all over the US. So basically, I grew up traveling. And then when I went to college, traveling was really easy for me just because I grew up doing it. And then I majored in industrial engineering and technology. I graduated, and then Katie and I met 2 years later after the Bitcoin conference in 2021. And it's funny how we met actually because so before I found Bitcoin, I actually was orange pilled through my mom because she heard Max Kaiser talking to Alex Jones about Bitcoin, and that's when he gave him the laptop with 10,000 Bitcoin on it. but that was still super early. And then I came home one time from college and she was like, listen, there's this freedom money. Got to get our hands on it. Like, it's going to change the world. And that's basically when I started going down the rabbit hole. And then when COVID happened, I was like, I'm all alone. Like, it was basically just me and my family, like, ranting to each other. Like, this is so fucked up. Like, what are they trying to do here? And it was basically just us ranting to each other in the kitchen. And then my mom is like, look, like Max and Stacy are on Twitter. They say like there's a bunch of Bitcoiners like talking on Twitter. And I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll get on. I'll see what it's like. And I just was basically venting on Twitter to like the 3 people that were following me at the time. And then I just started like connecting with Bitcoiners on Twitter. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's actually a community. I'm not like crazy, just twiddling my thumbs at home. Like, are there other people who think the way I think? So that's how I found out that the Bitcoin conference was happening in Miami. And I was like, okay, like I'll go to that. Met a bunch of the people that I had connected with on Twitter. And then after the conference, this like random guy who I met was like, oh, I'm putting together a dinner. Do you want to come? And I was like, sure. And then when Katie got the invite, it was the same thing, like some random guy that she had just met like one time. And she was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. And we met, like totally like hit it off right off the bat. Like just obviously because we were connected on all fronts. And then a couple months later, she DM'd me and she's like, you know, what are you doing? Would you be interested in like working together? And I was like, yeah. And that's how it started.
That's fate. That really is fate. It's really strange sometimes how you can meet people who have such a large impact on your life, and it happens so randomly like that. Both you guys meet some random person at a conference, you meet at a little dinner, and then all of a sudden you guys are running one of the more interesting Bitcoin-centered businesses in the space. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so funny because, like, if I had never gotten on Twitter, none of this would have happened. Like, it's just wild because it even further like just hones in the point how important community is and finding and surrounding yourself with people that, you know, want the same things you do, because like my life could not be better right now.
Yeah, it's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin is hope. Something you mentioned there that was interesting was engineering. There's a lot of engineers in the Bitcoin space. Lynn Alden, I think Preston has an engineering background, and yourself. That's there's some sort of a correlation there. It's just something I wanted to double click on. Must be something about Sailor as well. Sailor's aeronautical engineering.
Yeah.
Interesting. But anyway, homeschooling as well. Like, I think the importance of homeschooling in the next 10 years, I think that's going to be an emergent trend that people look to, you know, exploit's probably the wrong word, but I think people are going to continue to be fed up with I'm just going to call it propaganda and dangerous ideas that are being fed to children these days in government-approved schooling. So I think homeschooling is going to be really, really interesting. Are you an only child, or do you have any siblings there? And what was homeschooling like for you?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And I absolutely loved it. Basically, my mom found this curriculum. I think it's still out there. It's called Ace Pace. And basically, it was these little booklets for like each important subject: math, English, history, science, reading. And basically, I would do that for like a couple hours in the morning. And then I was a competitive figure skater. So I would go and train, do any other activities I wanted to do. So I was also in 4-H. So I would do horseback riding, farming, art, sewing, cooking, like literally learned anything I could imagine. And I think it also allowed me to become super disciplined and have a lot of time management skills, just in self-discipline, just like if I want to do something, I get it done, you know? And it really allowed me to be flexible to just do whatever interested me.
Yeah, that's something amazing. If I ever have any young ones in the future, they will definitely be going to homeschool. They won't be going to a government school. It's pretty telling that Europe's trying to ban homeschooling. Whenever the government tries to ban something, you need to ask yourself why. Why are they banning that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure. Public schools are indoctrination camps. And they first it was to pump out good little workers, and now they want to cut off your children's sexual organs and become a slave to the state. So no, my children will definitely be homeschooled. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, you and me both. It's horrifying what they're teaching the kids, especially since 2020. Shifted gears into something, I'm not sure if it's more optimistic, because when we start talking about everybody's favorite Bond villain, Klaus Schwab, I'm not sure if it's an optimistic topic, but you guys over at Plan B always talk about, the World Economic Forum and, who the sovereign individual is actually battling. So how do you see that battle against these globalists, like the central bankers and, the World Economic Forum and crew? How do you see that battle evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? Do you think Clown World has peaked, or do you think they're going to, throw a few more interesting Clown World cards at us?
Oh, I don't think the clown world is over by any means. I think they're going to try everything in their power to get their way. I think one thing was promising is that I think they tried their COVID policies too quickly. So I think it actually opened up a lot of people's eyes of like, what are they actually trying to do here? I still think a lot of people are asleep to what's actually going on. But I feel like, I'm optimistic. I don't think that the globalists will win. I just think that we all need to stop it from happening. I mean, basically you just need to say, no, I'm not going to adhere to your policies. We literally a group of people that just one day said, yes, I am in power. You all must listen to me. And now they're slowly implementing each of their leaders into different countries. You've got Justin Trudeau. You've got Jacinda Ardern, who stepped down, but I'm sure we haven't seen the last of her. And it's just it's like, where these people come from? They just all of a sudden just said, I am king.
It's amazing. It's really scary. I was working there for Mark Moss for a good 18 months and helping him research for videos, and he used to love, looking at the World Economic Forum. And when you look at all the presidents and prime ministers who were literally hand-trained by Klaus Schwab at one of the programs they have called the Young Global Leaders, it's terrifying. Like Jacinta Ardern, Justin Trudeau, the former Australian Prime Minister, they're everywhere. They are everywhere. But
it's crazy.
Like you said, like as we were talking about conferences earlier though, like especially being locked inside Australia in 2020 and 2021, I was a little bit more pessimistic or nihilistic about the future. But when you kind of escape and you go to these, freedom-oriented conferences and you realize just how many there is of us versus them, I think that's really, as you said, bullish. It's a very, very, it does fill you more with optimism. And I, like you, I think we're going to win. I'm just not sure how long this battle is going to be, but I think the next, decade, it'll be a very, very interesting time. I think it's actually going to be probably some of the most consequential years in human history, but, thank God we got Bitcoin, and I'm interested to see how it unfolds.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, thank God we have Bitcoin. Thank God we can surround ourselves with people who want the same things that we do. Like, in the U.S., it's either Texas or Florida. And I live in both, basically. So, and honestly, conferences are just nice reminders. I mean, I couldn't imagine, like, thinking about where I was 2 years ago, basically just having no friends, basically surrounded by, other than my family, nobody who saw the world the same way I do. And now having a whole group of people where I know that if I reach out to anybody, that I can rely on any of my friends.
Yeah, it's the importance of community. It's a really, really big one, and I'm excited to watch this kind of localization take place over the next few years. So you guys over there at Plan B Passports, I think the last time I checked, are you guys a team of 3 at the moment? And are you looking to expand? If if we do get another bull market in the next year or two, I'm expecting more and more people will only want to leave their tyrannical Western governments. So what's the plans over there? Plan B passport.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I mean, we're a super lean company. We're all able to take on a lot. And I'm sure we'll grow the team when need be. But the way we have it, I mean, we have such efficient processes in place. Got a great lawyer, great executive assistant. Katie and I work really well together. And I'm sure we'll take on more lawyers in the future when we grow, but it's just a great operation we've got going so far.
Yeah, it's a looks like a very old machine. I mean, 700 people expressing interest to go to El Salvador. That's still kind of got me really chewing on it. That's a really interesting one. Jess, I think I've just about hit on everything I wanted to in today's podcast, and I always like to end it on a little bit more of a fun note with some rapid fire questions. So the first one I've got for you is, do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
There you go.
I mean, how could you not? How could you not think there are other suits out there? But yeah.
Yeah, there's I don't know anything about the universe or the galaxies, but my very limited knowledge tells me mathematically it's a pretty high chance there's life out there. So yeah, I always like.
So.
Yeah, what's that? Sorry, I missed. What was the name of the show?
Ancient Alien, great show.
Okay, I can't remember if I've heard that one. Listeners, write that one down.
History Channel, yeah.
Okay, if I haven't seen, I'm gonna have to check it out. Final question I've got for you. This is a little bit even more left field. Do you think it's a possibility that we could be living in a simulation?
Oof. God, I hope not.
That's a thought experiment, that one is.
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy, and then I think Elon Musk brought it up on a podcast about a year ago, and I went a little bit down that rabbit hole, and that's a really interesting one. But Jess, that is all I've got teed up for today. Is there any final comments or final things that you thought we didn't hit on today that you'd like to mention?
No, that was basically it. I just feel like more people need to put themselves out there, and I feel like people are just afraid of actually voicing their opinion because they're just worried that they're just going to be struck down by people saying, oh, you're a racist, misogynist, bigot, or whatever. And it's like, no, I just want my freedoms, okay? It's like, I am not some psychopath. So I just feel like people, just embrace what you believe in and join the fun.
Yeah, that's what it's like. Join the fun. And I think the NPCs have been trained so hard to kind of think of freedom as a dirty word, especially over the past 3 years. How dare you want freedom?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a good note to end the podcast on. Like, we are going to win. Bitcoin does give me hope. Without Bitcoin, I wouldn't be so sure that we're going to win, but I really do think we are. So Jess, where can the listeners find you online, and how do they get in contact with you guys if they want a second passport?
Yeah, so my Twitter is just at Jessica Hodler, and then you can always email me at jessica@planbpassport.com. Our website is also just www.planbpassport.com.
I have to say, you're a great follow on Twitter as well. The listeners will get a little bit of a chuckle and a giggle out of some of your tweets. So if you're not on Twitter, anyone listening in, if you're not on Twitter, jump on Twitter. It's a blast. Are you on Nostr yet, actually?
No, I need to do that.
You and me both. I have an account, but I still haven't figured out how to do the profile picture. So I think I've done like 2 notes or whatever they call them. But anyway, Jess, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming on, and I hope the listeners have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next podcast.